Deep in the forests of Aotearoa, New Zealand, where ancient trees stretched their branches toward mist-covered skies and the earth smelled of moss and damp leaves, a quiet miracle was unfolding. The forest was alive, but its life moved softly. Wind brushed gently through the canopy. Fern fronds trembled in the cool air. Insects hummed their endless nighttime chorus. Somewhere far off, waves from the southern ocean whispered against distant shores. And beneath the thick roots of an old tree, in a carefully hidden nest lined with soft plant fibers, a tiny movement broke the silence. A pale green egg trembled. Then, almost imperceptibly, it cracked. Inside the fragile shell, a small beak pushed forward with surprising determination. The creature within had never seen the world before. It had only known darkness, warmth, and the steady rhythm of life forming around it. But instinct was powerful. With a faint tapping sound, the shell began to split. Hours passed slowly in the quiet forest as the chick fought its way into existence. The shell finally broke apart, revealing a damp, fragile bundle of life. Tiny claws stretched against the earth. A soft chirp escaped into the night. A Kākāpō chick had been born. Far away, several humans were watching. The monitors. In a small operations room at the New Zealand Department of Conservation, computer screens glowed in the dim light. Monitors displayed live footage from remote cameras scattered across predator-free islands. One screen flickered with the image of the newly hatched chick. A young wildlife technician leaned closer. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Another technician nodded, adjusting his headset. "It's moving, definitely moving." Within minutes, the message spread quietly through the conservation team. After 4 long years, a new Kākāpō had finally hatched. The chick was soon given a name, Tawairia12026. It had emerged from its shell on February 14th, a date that would soon become meaningful for everyone involved in protecting one of the rarest birds on Earth. But this chick was more than just a birth. It was hope. One of the rarest birds alive. The Kākāpō was unlike any other parrot on the planet. Large, round, and covered in moss-green feathers patterned like forest shadows, the bird looked almost as if the earth itself had shaped it. But perhaps its most unusual trait was what it could not do. It could not fly. Millions of years earlier, when New Zealand had no land predators, flight had slowly become unnecessary for the Kākāpō. Instead, it evolved into a heavy, ground-dwelling parrot that roamed the forest floor, climbing trees with powerful claws and gliding short distances back down. Its face was framed with soft feathers like an owl's. Its curious eyes shone with intelligence. And it lived an astonishingly long life, sometimes more than 90 years. But its survival had come at a cost. When humans arrived in New Zealand centuries ago, they unknowingly brought predators that the Kākāpō had never evolved to defend against. Cats. Stoats. Rats. Dogs. Within decades, the birds began disappearing. By the late 20th century, the species had reached the edge of extinction. The lowest point. In the 1990s, conservationists made a terrifying discovery. Only 51 Kākāpō remained alive. 51. The entire future of the species depended on those birds. The discovery sent shockwaves through New Zealand's conservation community. Experts realized that without immediate intervention, the species could vanish forever. So they launched one of the most ambitious wildlife recovery efforts ever attempted. The remaining birds were carefully captured and relocated to 3 remote, predator-free islands. Whenua Hou. Pukenui. Te Kākāpō. These islands would become sanctuaries, the last safe homes for the world's surviving kakapo. There, scientists began an extraordinary effort to monitor every bird, every nest, every egg. Some birds were even fitted with tiny transmitters so researchers could track their movements through the forest. Every chick mattered. Every egg mattered. Every single bird mattered. Slow recovery. The recovery program began working. Very slowly. Kakapo were not easy animals to help. They had one very unusual behavior that made breeding difficult. They only reproduced when a particular tree, the rimu, produced an abundant crop of fruit. The rimu tree did not fruit every year. Sometimes it waited 2 years. Sometimes 3. Sometimes 4. When the trees finally burst into fruit, female kakapo would sense the abundance of food and begin nesting. If the rimu trees produced little fruit, the birds simply wouldn't breed. The forest itself controlled their reproduction. And so conservationists had to wait. Year after year. Watching. Hoping. A new season begins. 4 years passed without a breeding season. For long years without new chicks. Then the forest changed. Rimu trees across the islands began producing heavy clusters of fruit. Bright red berries hung from branches like tiny lanterns. To the trained eyes of conservationists, it meant only one thing. The birds would breed again. Soon the forests of Whenuaho, Pukenui, and Te Kākāpō filled with a strange and beautiful sound. Male kakapo were calling. During the breeding season, males gathered in special display areas called leks. There they dug shallow bowls into the ground and began producing deep, resonant booming calls. The sound carried through the forest like distant drums. Boom. 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 It could travel several kilometers through the night. The calls attracted females, who would travel through the forest to choose a mate. Once mating was finished, the female raised the chicks alone. And that is where the true challenge began. Eggs in the forest. Weeks later, conservation teams began discovering nests. Hidden among roots, under fallen logs, and inside natural forest hollows, female kakapo had laid their eggs. Carefully, quietly, researchers approached the nests. Every movement had to be gentle. Every step had to respect the bird's natural behavior. Eggs were sometimes temporarily removed for artificial incubation, increasing the chances of survival. Some were left with their mothers but monitored with tiny cameras. Technology had become one of the kakapo's greatest allies. By the time the breeding season reached its peak, researchers had identified 140 fertile eggs. It was one of the most promising breeding seasons in years. Still, no one celebrated yet. Eggs were fragile. Chicks were even more fragile. The first hatchling. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. February 14th. On a camera feed deep within the forest, a tiny green chick broke through its shell. Tawairie 12026 had arrived. Word spread through the conservation teams quickly. Phones buzzed. Messages appeared on screens. Someone quietly cheered. 4 years of waiting had finally ended. And this was only the beginning. The numbers grow. Over the following weeks, more eggs began to hatch. 1. Then 3. Then 5. Each time a chick appeared, the team updated their records carefully. The population board inside the Department of Conservation's Operations Center slowly filled with numbers written in black marker. Every Friday, the team shared the results with the public. A photograph of the tally, written on a refrigerator whiteboard, was posted online. It became a small weekly ritual followed by thousands of people around the world. People watched the numbers climb. 12 chicks. 23 chicks. 41 chicks. Then 52 confirmed chicks. And through remote monitoring technology, researchers believed there were 7 more that had hatched unseen. That brought the estimated total to 59 healthy chicks. For a species once reduced to only 51 individuals, the number felt almost unbelievable. A growing population. Across the islands, the forests now held 236 adult Kākāpō. Each bird had a name. Each bird had a record. Each bird had caretakers who knew its history. For the conservation team, the birds were not just statistics. They were individuals. Some were shy. Some were bold. Some were famously curious, occasionally approaching researchers with fearless interest. And each one carried the fragile future of the species. Hope for the future. At the center of the program was Deidre Virgo, the operations manager for the Kākāpō recovery effort. For years, she and her colleagues had lived with uncertainty. Every breeding season brought excitement. Every failed egg brought disappointment. But every chick meant something extraordinary. In a message shared with conservation supporters around the world, she wrote, "Every new chick brings the species further from the brink of extinction." Her words captured the feeling shared by the entire team. There's always a sense of hope and optimism for the future. But even she knew that success was fragile. Not every chick would survive. Nature was unpredictable. Still, something remarkable was happening. For the first time in decades, the Kākāpō population was truly growing. The real goal. Yet numbers alone were not enough. The conservation team had a larger dream. The goal was not simply to prevent extinction. The goal was recovery. Virgo explained it clearly. Success is not just about the number of new chicks. We want to create healthy, self-sustaining populations of Kākāpō that are thriving, not just surviving. For now, the birds remained among the most carefully monitored animals on Earth. Each one carried a transmitter. Each nest had cameras. Each chick had caretakers ready to intervene if something went wrong. But someday, the scientists hoped, the birds would not need such constant help. One day, the forests of New Zealand might once again support wild populations of Kākāpō living naturally. The idea once seemed impossible. Now it felt closer than ever.